Darkness remembers what light tries to forget. Somewhere beyond the mapped stars, hidden behind a veil of dust and silence, there is a place the universe abandoned. They called it Colony EOS 9 once, a shining beacon of human expansion, a promise that humanity's reach had no limits. It was supposed to be paradise, fertile soil, breathable air, oceans rich with life, a world meant to prove that humanity could thrive among the stars. But what history does not write is what happened after paradise collapsed. What history will not tell you is what the survivors became. The records claimed the colony was destroyed by a solar flare, an unfortunate accident of stellar science. Ships were dispatched to investigate, but none returned. Eventually, bureaucrats declared EOS 9 lost, a casualty of exploration. And with time, people stopped asking questions. The colony was forgotten. But the survivors did not die. They endured. And what they did to endure is a story that scars the soul. The transmission that brought their secret back into the light began as static, a faint whisper buried in interstellar noise. At first, analysts thought it was just interference from a mining relay. But then the signal sharpened. Words broke through. Weak, trembling, but unmistakably human. "This is EOS 9. We are still here." The voice cut through centuries of silence, a ghost from a world erased. The discovery spread like wildfire among intelligent circles. A colony thought dead, now alive. But no rescue fleet was launched. No government declared aid. Instead, whispers spread. What did they mean by still here? Because the voice did not sound like hope. It sounded like warning. Imagine it, being one of those colonists. Generations cut off from Earth, trapped on a planet that had turned against you. The soil poisoned by storms, crops withering into ash, animals dying in droves. The proud colony halls collapsing into ruins while storms of glass shards screamed across the plains. The sun that was once warm turned cruel, scorching the land by day, freezing it by night. At first they tried to rebuild. They rationed supplies, recycled every drop of water, planted crops again and again in soil that refused to yield. But hunger grows faster than hope. When the first children starved, the council promised a new strategy. When the next wave of children died, the council dissolved. Hunger devours leadership first, mercy second, and morality last. The survivors of EOS 9 did what humans always do. But adaptation has a cost. Darius Holland was a boy when the storms took his parents. He remembered the colony as it was, the laughter of markets, the banners of expansion fluttering in the wind. But his adulthood was carved from bone and hunger. By the time he was 20, the colony was no longer a city. It was a labyrinth of scavenger camps hidden in caves, lit by the flicker of stolen power cells. Every night screams carried on the wind. Sometimes it was the storm, sometimes it was not. The elders told stories of a time when EOS 9 thrived, but to Darius and his generation, those were myths, fairy tales from a broken world. What mattered was food, water, and fire. And when the animals disappeared, when the crops withered to dust, the survivors looked at each other with hollow eyes. That was when the rules changed. It began quietly. A body left behind after a cave-in. Whispers of what could be done with it. Hunger makes monsters of men, but it also makes pragmatists. The first time was framed as necessity, the second time as survival. By the third, there was no need for justification. What the survivors did to live became ritual. Darius remembered the first time he saw it happen. A circle of gaunt faces around a fire, the smell of something cooking. His stomach twisted with horror and hunger all at once. He swore he would never take part. But hunger is patient. Hunger waits. When his ribs pressed against his skin and his mind blurred into delirium, he broke his vow. The taste never left his mouth. Years passed. Generations grew up in the shadow of that decision. The children of EOS 9 did not think it unnatural. They were taught, this is what survival means. This is what it takes to endure when the universe forgets you. And so a culture was born, one built not on hope or progress, but on desperation sanctified into law. By the time the signal was sent, The survivors were no longer colonists. They were something else, something forged in fire, famine, and flesh. They did not ask for rescue. They asked to be remembered. And in that request, in the haunted tremor of their voices, there was an unspoken truth. They knew what they had become, and they knew the universe would recoil. What would you do, listener, if it were you on EOS 9? If every sunrise meant hunger, if every night meant fear, if every child you held in your arms cried for food you could not give, would you hold to morality, or would you feed your child with the only thing left to give? That is why the story of EOS 9 shocks, terrifies, and fascinates. Because it does not belong to aliens, or monsters, or the supernatural. It belongs to humanity. It is proof that under enough pressure, the line between man and monster is thinner than we dare admit. And the most chilling part is not what they did. It is that they survived. They are still there, watching the stars, waiting for someone to come, but the question remains, do we dare? The second century of isolation reshaped EOS 9 into a place unrecognizable to those who first stepped upon its soil. Where once stood glass domes and spires gleaming with hope, there now sprawled a labyrinth of jagged caves, crumbling towers, and fires that burned with a sickly smoke. Humanity had not only survived, it had mutated its way of living into something raw and relentless. Children were no longer told fairy tales of Earth's oceans or cities of light. Those were the lies of the old world, irrelevant to the brutal reality that EOS 9 demanded. Instead, they were taught chants that bound them to the laws of survival. Eat to live to endure. Words that carried the weight of generations. Darius Holland, now a man grown into one of the colony's leaders, looked out across the encampment carved into the cliffs. He remembered his boyhood vow never to follow the path his people had chosen. He remembered the hunger that broke him, the taste he could never wash away. But by now his mind had twisted that shame into something else. Justification. He told himself it was not monstrous, it was pragmatic. And pragmatism had become God on EOS 9. Survivors divided themselves into tribes, each clinging to scraps of land, scavenging what little technology still sputtered from the ruins of the colony. Trade between tribes existed, but it was not measured in credits or metal. Trade was measured in flesh. A body was currency, the highest form of wealth. It was not only the dead who paid this price. Whispers told of the choosing, an ancient ritual that had grown from necessity into tradition. When supplies dwindled, when the herds of half-feral alien beasts vanished, the tribes gathered. One would be chosen by lot, offered to the fire so that the rest could endure. The victim was honored, their name etched into memory, but their body was consumed. The children of EOS 9 did not see horror in this. They saw sacrifice. They saw community. They saw the price of survival. And in the dark caves where chants echoed and fires burned, they grew up believing this was what it meant to be human. But not everyone accepted it. There were always whispers of rebellion, always small groups who longed for a way back to the old ways. People who clung to fragments of Earth's culture, the songs, the books, the promise of morality. They lived in the shadows, scavenging what they could, refusing to take part in the choosing. They called themselves the Remembered. Darius despised them. To him, they were dangerous dreamers, weak links that threatened the balance of survival. He had watched one of their gatherings once, hidden in the dark, listening to the forbidden words of Earth songs sung softly around a hidden fire. It stirred something in him, a forgotten ache, but it also made him furious. Those songs would not fill bellies. Those memories would not protect children from hunger. When the choosing came, the Remembered refused to participate. Some tribes hunted them down, calling them traitors to survival. Others simply left them to starve. Yet somehow the Remembered endured, passing down their quiet rebellion from parent to child. It was from them that the signal came. No one knew who risked it. No one knew how they had reactivated the old transmitter buried beneath the ruins of the colony LS first hub. But they did. Their voices carried across the void, fragile but defiant. They did not ask for flesh. They did not ask for trade. They asked for memory. This is EOS 9. We are still here. Do not forget us. When fragments of the message spread across hidden channels back on Earth, people argued about what it meant. Some insisted it was a hoax. Others demanded a rescue mission. But the whispers from intelligence circles painted a darker picture. The remembered might want rescue, but what about the rest of the colony? Would they even allow themselves to be saved? Or had survival reshaped them into something too far gone? Back on EOS 9, Darius gathered his people around the firelight. His voice, gravel and iron, carried through the cavern. Do you hear it? The remembered have betrayed us. They call for outsiders. They call for those who abandoned us once to come again. They would give away our secrets, our strength. Would you allow that? The crowd roared in fury, faces thin with hunger, twisted with anger. They had been taught since birth that outsiders meant death. Outsiders meant the soft morality of the past, the weakness that had no place in their world. They would bring pity, Darius spat. Pity is poison. We have no need for their pity. We are the forgotten, and we are strong because of it. We take what the universe denies us. We endure when the stars turn away. No one remembers us, but we remain. The firelight flickered across the faces of his people. They raised their fists, chanting, "We endure, we endure." The signal had sparked something dangerous. Not hope, but paranoia. The remembered were now hunted more fiercely than ever before. Their secret gatherings shattered by raids, their fires extinguished, their voices silenced one by one. Still, they resisted. They whispered that one day a ship would come, that humanity would see them not as beasts, but as kin, that the forgotten would be remembered. But Darius knew the truth. No ship would come, no rescue was possible, and even if it did, what would they find? Men and women who had eaten the flesh of their own, who had raised children on the bones of sacrifice. Could such people be welcomed back into the fold of humanity? Or were they something new entirely, something that could never be allowed to leave their world? That question haunted Darius, though he would never admit it aloud. Sometimes, in the quiet before sleep, he saw his mother's face, hollow-eyed and starving. He remembered her hand pushing food toward him, food she had not taken for herself. He remembered her collapse. He remembered the day they carried her to the fire. Was survival worth what it cost? He silenced the thought, burying it beneath chants of endurance. But thoughts are like seeds in poisoned soil. They linger, waiting for the moment to grow. The conflict between the hardened tribes and the remembered had been simmering for decades, but the signal changed everything. It was no longer whispers in the dark or secret songs by hidden fires. Now, it was war. The night it began, Darius Holland sat in the council cavern, the great fire blazing at the center. Leaders of the nearby tribes surrounded him, their faces gaunt and sharp as bone. The firelight flickered in their hollow eyes, reflecting years of hunger, sacrifice, and cruelty, accepted as law. The remembered have betrayed us, Darius said, his voice steady, but loud enough to echo off the stone walls. They sent word to the stars. They invite outsiders. Outsiders who left us here to rot. Outsiders who will come not to save, but to destroy what we have built. Would you let them undo us? The room erupted with shouts. Men slammed fists on stone. Women cried out curses. Fear ran through them like a current. Fear of the unknown. Fear of change. One elder leaned forward, his voice raspy but firm. What if the outsiders bring food? Medicine? What if they truly mean to save? The crowd hissed, but Darius raised his hand for silence. He stared into the elder's eyes, and for a moment something softer flickered within him. Then he spoke. Would you eat their food when it runs out? Would you heal with their medicine when the storms tear down their shelters? No, they will not save us. They will make us weak. They will poison us with false hope. Survival is ours alone. We are the forgotten. And we endure. The words ignited the chamber. Fists raised, voices chanted, the fire crackled like thunder. By dawn, the decision was made. The remembered would be hunted, their rebellion crushed before it spread. The tribes united not in prosperity, but in paranoia. The first raid came swiftly. Darius led it himself, guiding his warriors through narrow ravines toward a hidden camp revealed by spies. The remembered had gathered around a small fire, their voices raised in song, soft, trembling, but defiant. The sound struck Darius like a blade to the chest. For a moment he was a boy again, listening from the shadows to the forbidden words of Earth. For a moment, he remembered. Then he gave the order. The warriors surged forward, weapons gleaming in firelight. Screams pierced the night. The remembered scattered, some fighting back with desperate fury, others fleeing into the dark. A few were captured alive, dragged before the council fire as proof of victory. The tribe demanded blood. The prisoners were bound, their faces pale but unbroken. One woman, her hair streaked with silver, stared directly at Darius. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You were once one of us, Darius. You remember. You know this is not what humanity was meant to become." The words cut deeper than she knew. Darius clenched his fists, rage boiling to cover the doubt that gnawed at his soul. He raised his voice so all could hear. What humanity was meant to be does not matter. What we are is what survives. The crowd roared approval. The prisoners were taken to the flames. Their screams mingled with the chants of the tribe. Darius watched, his jaw tight, his chest hollow. That night, he could not sleep. The woman's words echoed through him, relentless. "You remember." And he did. Against his will, against his own survival, he remembered. The songs, the laughter, the warmth of markets filled with food. His mother's face before hunger hollowed it. The taste of bread, long gone from his tongue. He hated those memories. They weakened him. They weakened everyone. But the signal had awoken something far greater than memory. It had awakened the possibility of change. Weeks passed, and the remembered fought back. They struck from the shadows, small groups ambushing scavengers, sabotaging supply caches, even daring to attack a tribal stronghold. They left messages behind, scrawled on walls and etched into stone. "We are still human. We are not beasts." Each act of defiance fed the fire of paranoia. The tribes responded with greater brutality, doubling the choosings, executing anyone suspected of sympathy. Fear spread faster than hunger. But even among the tribes, whispers began to grow. Young ones asked questions their parents could not silence. What if the outsiders did come? What if they brought not pity, but power? What if survival did not have to mean sacrifice? Darius saw the cracks forming. He tightened his grip, but the tighter he held, the more the rebellion spread. The remembered were no longer just a fringe. They were becoming a movement. One night, as he stood on the cliffs overlooking the ruins of the old colony hub, he saw a flicker in the sky. At first he thought it was the storm. Then he realized it was not. A streak of light, faint but real, crossing the heavens. A ship. For the first time in his life, Darius felt true fear. Not of hunger, not of storms, but of change. What would happen if the outsiders came? Would they see savages? Monsters? Would they burn EOS 9 clean of its shame? Or would they try to save them? And if they did, would his people even allow themselves to be saved? Darius clenched his fists and whispered to the wind, "They will not take us. We are the forgotten. And we endure." But deep inside, where the chants could not drown it, another voice whispered back, "What if she was right?" The streak in the sky had been no illusion. Word spread quickly across the valley, whispered first as rumor, then shouted as truth. A ship had entered orbit. The stars had finally answered. For the remembered, it was a miracle. For the tribes, it was a threat unlike any they had ever known. At the heart of Outpost Ashen, the largest of the tribal strongholds, Darius Holland gathered his council. The room was silent save for the crackling of the great fire. Each leader wore the hardened face of one who had seen too much, but even among them, fear lingered like smoke. "They are here," Darius said flatly. "The outsiders who abandoned us, the ones who will try to chain us with false gifts. If we let them land unchallenged, our way of life ends. We must strike first." Some nodded eagerly, others hesitated. One younger chieftain, eyes shadowed with doubt, dared to speak. "What if they bring food? Real food. not dried moss or marrow broth. What if they bring medicine for the fevers that kill our children? Are we so certain they mean us harm? A hush fell. Darius rose to his feet. His shadow towered across the stone wall, sharp as a blade. Food runs out. Medicine runs out. Hope runs out. Survival does not. Do not be fools. If we take their hand, we die as weaklings. If we raise our blades, we live as men. The fire roared as if answering him. Reluctant heads bowed. The decision was made. But far beyond their council chamber, across the ruined canyons where wind howled like the ghosts of the dead, the remembered had also seen the ship. They gathered at their hidden sanctuaries, their faces lit by trembling torchlight, voices quivering with awe. They came, whispered Mara, the silver-haired woman who had faced Darius without flinching. The stars did not forget us. Humanity has not forsaken us. The signal was heard. Some wept openly. Others laughed with joy, an emotion nearly lost on Eos 9. They sang forbidden songs that night, voices raw but unbroken. They sang of cities of light, of oceans of blue, of bread and wine and laughter. Their song rose like a beacon into the dark sky. And high above, aboard the survey vessel Solace, the crew listened in stunned silence as their instruments caught faint human voices on the wind. "Commander," one officer said, eyes wide. "They are alive down there." Commander Imani Rao, hardened by decades of exploration, stared at the readings. No one had expected survivors. Eos 9 had been listed as a failed colony, written off as one of humanity's tragic experiments. Yet here was proof. Voices, real and undeniable. "Alive," she murmured. "After all this time." Her voice carried both wonder and dread, for survival on such a hostile world would not have come without cost. The crew debated furiously. Some wanted immediate descent, desperate to bring aid. Others warned caution, knowing nothing of what these survivors had become. In the end, Rao made the choice. "We go down," she said, "but we tread carefully. They are human, yes, but they may not be the humanity we remember." When the first shuttle descended, its engines carved fire across the night sky. To the remembered, it was salvation descending like a star reborn. They rushed from their hiding places, tears streaming, arms raised to the heavens. To the tribes, it was an invasion. Darius watched from the cliffs as the shuttle touched down in a barren field. His jaw tightened, his hand gripping the haft of his spear. Around him, warriors whispered in rage and fear. "They come to take what is ours. They come to enslave us. They come to end us." Darius did not answer. He only watched, eyes fixed on the figures emerging from the shuttle. Humans, but not like them, clad in clean armor, faces bright with health, carrying tools and weapons that shimmered with impossible light. They moved with strength, born of nourishment, of comfort, of civilization. To Darius, they looked like gods. And gods were not to be worshipped. Gods were to be killed. Down in the field, the crew of the Solace was stunned. The survivors who approached them wore rags of stitched hide, their bodies scarred and gaunt, their eyes both wild and wary. Some fell to their knees in reverence, others shouted questions no translator could catch. But there was no mistaking the desperation in their faces. Commander Rao stepped forward, her voice amplified by her helmet. "We are here to help. We come from Earth, from the stars. You are not forgotten." The remembered sobbed. Their songs rose louder, trembling with joy. But not all knelt. A stone struck one of the crew, then another. Shouts rang out, sharp and guttural. Figures emerged from the ridges above, spears and jagged blades raised. The tribes had come. The field erupted in chaos. Warriors charged, their screams piercing the night. The crew of the Solace scrambled for cover, non-lethal pulses flashing from their weapons. Smoke and fire filled the air. The remembered, caught in the middle, shouted for peace, for unity, their pleas lost in the storm. And above it all, Darius roared. His voice carried across the battlefield, a thunder that shook the hearts of all who heard. "They will not take us. We are the forgotten, and we endure." The clash of old and new, of hunger and plenty, of past and future, had begun. For the first time in generations, the fate of Eos 9 hung not on survival alone, but on the question that had haunted them since the first storm fell. What does it mean to be human? The battle in the barren field raged only minutes, but to those who lived it, it stretched into eternity. The Solace crew fought to subdue, not to kill, firing pulses that dropped warriors in spasms of shock. But for every tribesman who fell, another charged, undeterred by pain, driven by fury and the iron law of survival. Commander Rao shouted for restraint, but her words were drowned beneath the clash of steel and the screams of the wounded. Then, as suddenly as it began, the tribes retreated, fading into the jagged ridges like ghosts of the stone. They left behind blood, broken weapons, and a silence heavy as the grave. The crew scrambled to regroup. Some tended to the wounded tribesmen with medkits, their hands trembling as they pressed coagulants into open gashes. Others scanned the horizon, fearing the attack would resume at any moment. But the remembered did not scatter. They remained, wide-eyed, kneeling before the visitors from the stars. Tears streaked through the dirt on their faces. One young boy stepped forward, clutching a scrap of cloth with faded markings. He held it out with trembling hands. Rao took it. Her heart stopped. It was a fragment of an old Earth flag, torn and stained but unmistakable. These people had carried it, preserved it, worshipped it through centuries of despair. They remembered, Rao whispered. The boy's voice cracked with awe. You came for us. Rao knelt, her armored hand brushing his shoulder. Yes, we came, and we will not leave you again. But as her words carried hope through the remembered, her mind churned with unease. What had these people endured to survive this long? And what would they do now that salvation had arrived? The Solace crew established a temporary camp, erecting domes that glowed faintly against the dark. They distributed ration packs, water purification tabs, and blankets. The remembered devoured them with desperate gratitude, their gaunt faces softening for the first time in memory. Yet Rao noticed something unsettling. When the children bit into the nutrient bars, they did not smile. When they drank the clean water, they gagged as if unused to purity. When they lay on soft bedding, some shook violently, unable to rest. It was as though survival had rewired them, twisting even comfort into something alien. Later that night, Rao convened with her officers. Around the glow of hollow screens, their faces were drawn, voices low. We underestimated them, Lieutenant Bren said. They are not just survivors, they are changed. Changed how? Rao asked. The medical officer shifted uncomfortably. Their physiology shows signs of long-term adaptation to starvation diets. Muscle fibers denser, organs shrunk, but efficiency doubled. They burn less fuel. They can live where we would starve in days. Rao frowned. And the tribes? The ones who attacked us? The officer hesitated. Worse. Their blood work shows anomalies. Elevated adrenal markers, extreme tolerance for pain, almost no immune response. It is as though their bodies learned to weaponize suffering itself. A chill spread through the room. What did they do to themselves? Someone whispered. Rao's mind returned to the battlefield. The ferocity, the madness, the unwavering will. They were not warriors born of tradition. They were survivors sculpted by necessity, by choices too terrible to imagine. And she realized with dawning horror, to live on Eos 9 they had done things no human should ever have to do. The answer came sooner than expected. While the crew worked, remembered elders approached. Among them was Mara, her silver hair catching the firelight. She bowed her head with dignity. You must know the truth, she said. If you mean to save us, you must understand what survival has cost. Rao studied her. The woman's eyes held no shame, only a weary defiance. Tell me. So Mara told them. She spoke of the early years, when the storms first stripped the land and crops failed. She told of famine so deep that whole families wasted away, of mothers cradling children too weak to cry. She told of desperate measures, Boiling leather, grinding bark, chewing soil for the illusion of fullness. And then she told of the moment when the leaders of the starving colony faced the unthinkable, the choosings. When food ran out entirely, they drew lots, one chosen each week, taken not in anger but in grim ceremony, sacrificed so the rest might live. Flesh became sustenance, blood became survival. Rao's stomach turned. Around her, officers went pale, some choking back bile. But Mara did not falter. It was not cruelty, she said. It was not madness. It was necessity. Without it, none of us would stand here today. We are the children of that choice. We are the proof of its truth. Silence crushed the camp. Even the hum of the machines seemed to dim. One officer whispered, "Cannibalism." The word hung heavy in the air. Mara met their horror with calm steel. You judge us, but you did not starve. You did not watch your children die with swollen bellies and hollow eyes. You did not live forgotten. We did what was required. We endured. And now, so do you. The remembered around her bowed their heads, not in shame, but in reverence. To them, the choosings were not horror. They were tradition. Sacred. Rao felt the ground tilt beneath her. These people had survived, yes, but at a cost that reshaped them into something both human and not. The tribes had made it ritual, a creed of endurance. The remembered, though gentler, still carried it in their bones. She realized with a cold certainty, to offer them salvation was to unravel the very foundation of their lives. If humanity came to rescue, what would it be rescuing? Humans, or something new, something born of desperation and blood? And more chilling still, if these survivors spread to the stars, what would they bring with them? The revelation hung over the Solace crew like a poisoned cloud. Cannibalism. Not a rumor, not a desperate act of a few, but a system, a culture, a law that had endured generations. Some of the officers argued through clenched teeth. We cannot support this. We cannot save this. They are not human anymore. Others pushed back. They are still alive. They are still us, no matter what they had to do. Do we abandon them now, after they endured the impossible? Commander Rao said nothing at first. She stood apart from the voices, staring out at the night sky, where EOS 9 storms carved jagged scars of lightning across the horizon. Finally, she spoke. They are human, she said. And because they are human, they made choices when no good choices existed. We cannot pretend to understand what starvation does to the soul, but we can understand this. They did not vanish. They survived. That demands respect. Her words steadied the crew, but unease lingered. Respect did not erase the horror. Compassion did not erase the danger. Meanwhile, among the remembered, excitement spread like wildfire. The outsiders had come. The promise of salvation was real. Children sang songs of earth by the fires, voices trembling with joy. Elders told stories of lush forests and shining cities, as though they were prophecies soon to be fulfilled. But far across the canyons, in the stronghold of Outpost Ashen, Darius Holland watched the sky with a heart of stone. Scouts had returned with reports of the outsiders' camp, their strange glowing shelters, their weapons that stunned but did not kill. Fools, Darius muttered. They think mercy is strength. They think kindness endures. He gathered his war council. The fire in the chamber burned low, casting long shadows on their scarred faces. They bring weakness, Darius said, his voice like steel scraping stone. They will poison our people with promises. Already the remembered bow to them. Already our children whisper of earth as though it will rise again. If we do not act, our strength dies. Our way dies. A chieftain slammed his fist against the wall. Then we burn them out. We show them what it means to endure. Darius nodded. The plan was set. Back at the Solace camp, Mara warned Commander Rao of what was coming. The tribes will not yield. They see your mercy as threat, your presence as disease. They will come for you. You must leave before it is too late. Rao studied her, searching her weary eyes. And you? Will you come with us if we go? Mara's silence was answer enough. She looked at her people. The remembered huddled around the fire, clutching ration packs as if they were relics. They had waited centuries for this moment. To leave now would be to betray hope itself. "No," Mara whispered. "We stay. We endure. But we endure with you, if you stay." That night Rao walked the perimeter of the camp, the alien wind whipping against her armor. She thought of Earth, the safety, the cities, the simple abundance. She thought of these survivors, gaunt and hardened, carrying horror in their blood. Could they ever return? Would Earth even accept them? Then came the sound, a low rumble across the ridges, like thunder that had learned to walk. The scouts' alarms blared. The tribes had come. Hundreds poured from the darkness, torches blazing, weapons raised. Their war cries tore through the night, primal and unyielding. The Solace crew scrambled into defensive positions, pulse rifles humming. The remembered clung to them, some screaming, some praying. Darius himself led the charge. His silhouette loomed at the front, his spear gleaming in firelight. His voice rose above the chaos. "Strike them down. Show them we do not bow. We do not beg. We endure." The clash was immediate and violent. Plasma pulses lit the night, dropping warriors in jolts of blue light. But the tribes did not falter. They rushed through smoke and fire, blades swinging, their bodies unafraid of pain, their eyes burning with fanatic will. A crewman screamed as a spear pierced his side. Another fell beneath a storm of jagged blades. Rao shouted for order, her voice ragged, as her team tried to hold the line without killing outright. But mercy faltered before madness. "Commander!" Lieutenant Bren shouted, desperation in his eyes. "We cannot hold them unless we kill." Rao hesitated, torn between principle and survival. Then she saw the remembered, families pressed against the walls of the camp, children crying, elders shielding them with frail arms. If the tribes broke through, it would not just be her crew that died. It would be all of them. Her voice broke like thunder. "Fire to kill." The night erupted in blood and fire. Plasma bolts burned holes through flesh. Warriors dropped screaming, their bodies scorched. The air reeked of ozone and charred skin. Still they came, wave after wave, until the ground was carpeted with the fallen. At last, silence fell. Smoke drifted through the ruins of the battlefield. The tribes lay shattered, their cries fading into the wind. Darius stood among the corpses, his body battered, his eyes ablaze. Wounded but alive, he raised his spear and roared defiance into the night. "We are the forgotten. We endure." Then he vanished into the shadows, leaving his dead behind. The Solace crew stood shaken, weapons heavy in their hands. They had come as saviors, not soldiers. Now their armor was splattered with blood. Rao looked upon the fallen, her heart leaden. This was not salvation. This was war. And deep inside, she feared it had only just begun. The battlefield still smoldered by dawn. The air reeked of ash and blood, smoke curling into the pale morning sky like the breath of ghosts. The crew of the Solace moved silently among the wreckage, dragging bodies into heaps, tending to the wounded, and marking their dead for recovery. The remembered watched with hollow eyes. Some whispered prayers. Others sang fragments of old Earth hymns, their voices cracked and trembling. But even in their gratitude, fear simmered. They had seen the power of the outsiders' weapons, and they had seen the tribe's ferocity. Between those forces, they felt like leaves caught in a storm. Commander Rao stood at the edge of the carnage, staring at the ridges where Darius had vanished. He had lived. She knew it, and if he lived, this war was not finished. Her officers gathered around her, their faces grim. "We cannot stay," Lieutenant Bren said. "We came here to survey, not to fight a war. Every moment we remain, we endanger the ship, the crew, and the survivors themselves." Another officer shook her head. "If we leave, the remembered are slaughtered. The tribes will not stop. They see us as infection. They will cut it out." The debate circled like vultures over a carcass. Duty clashed with compassion, logic with morality. Rao listened in silence, her jaw tight. Finally, she spoke. "We did not come here to abandon humanity. Not again. If we go, the tribes win. If we stay, maybe, just maybe, something changes. We fight for them, or we leave them to die. There is no middle ground. Her words fell heavy, but they settled the matter. The crew would stay for now. They would fortify, protect, and endure alongside the remembered. But deep in the mountains, Darius was not idle. He limped through the caverns of Ashen, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. Warriors gathered around him, their faces torn by grief and rage. "They slaughtered our kin," one cried. "They burn us with fire from the stars," another spat. Darius raised his hand, silencing them. His voice came low, hard as iron. "They think us beaten. They think us broken. But we endure, always, and we will strike a blow they cannot forget." He led them deeper into the caves, where the air grew hot and foul. At last they came to a chamber where a fissure split the earth itself, belching steam and glowing faint with magma far below. Here, hidden for generations, the tribes kept their most dangerous weapon. Fire distilled from the planet's veins, volatile as lightning. They had used it rarely, for it was unstable, often killing those who carried it. But in Darius's hands, it would become more than a weapon. It would become a message. "We take their starfire," Darius declared, his eyes blazing with feverish light. "We turn it against them. We burn them from this world, and if we die unforgotten." His warriors roared their approval, though fear flickered in their eyes. Even they knew this was madness, but madness had kept them alive before. Back at the camp, the remembered began to change under the Solace's protection. Children learned words of earth they had never spoken. Elders sat weeping as they tasted clean bread, their trembling hands unable to release it, but adaptation came with unease. Some struggled to eat food not carved from sacrifice. Some whispered that comfort would make them soft, that survival required the old ways. A schism grew, subtle but widening, between those who longed for salvation and those who feared it. Mara sensed it, her heart heavy. She spoke quietly to Rao one evening as they watched the fires burn low. "You do not understand," Mara said. "The choosings were not just hunger. They became belief, a creed. To end them is to tear away what gave us purpose." Rao looked at her sharply. "Are you saying they should continue? Even with food? Even with safety?" Mara's voice trembled. "I am saying that survival is not only in the body, it is in the soul, and our souls were shaped by blood." Rao turned away, sickened. Was salvation truly salvation, if it meant erasing the very identity these people had built? The dilemma haunted her, but it was soon overshadowed by new terror. The scouts reported strange movements near the mountains. Fires at night, too many to count. And then came the smoke, thick, acrid, choking, rising in unnatural plumes. At first the crew thought it was volcanic activity, but then the readings came in. "It is fuel," the science officer said, his voice tight with dread. "They are harvesting the fissures. They are building something." Rao's blood ran cold. She knew what Darius was doing. He meant to turn the planet itself into a weapon. The decision pressed down on her with brutal weight. Stay and risk annihilation. Leave and doom the remembered to slaughter. But before she could decide, the first attack came. It began with fire. Torrents of burning liquid hurled from the ridges, crashing into the outskirts of the camp. Domes burst into flame, machines melted, screams split the night. Warriors surged from the smoke, their weapons ignited with stolen fire. The camp became an inferno. Crew and remembered fought side by side, scrambling to push back the onslaught. Plasma rifles hissed, arrows streaked, the air filled with fire and ash. And in the chaos Darius appeared, wreathed in smoke and flame, his spear burning with liquid fire. His voice roared above the madness. "Outsiders, you think us weak, you think us beasts, but we are the forgotten, and we will never bow." He hurled his burning spear and the ground itself seemed to explode. The war for EOS 9 had entered its final phase. The camp was an inferno. Flames consumed shelters, smoke blackened the sky, and the screams of the dying echoed like a dirge across the valley. Plasma bolts streaked through the fire, striking warriors down in flashes of blue light. But still they came, endless, unyielding, their bodies fueled by fury and the belief that survival was worth more than life itself. Commander Rao fought at the front, her pulse rifle glowing hot, her armor scorched. Beside her, Mara swung a jagged blade looted from the tribes, her silver hair tangled with soot. The remembered, once too weak to lift more than stones, fought with desperation, defending their children, defending the hope that had carried them through generations of despair. And through the chaos strode Darius Holland, his body a shadow of scars, his spear burning with liquid fire. His eyes glowed with madness and conviction. He carved through men and machine alike, roaring with every strike. "You will not take us," he thundered. "We are the forgotten. We endure." He was more than a man in that moment. He was the embodiment of centuries of suffering, of hunger and ritual and sacrifice. To his people, he was survival made flesh. To the crew of the Solace, he was terror. Rao saw him coming, his spear cutting down her soldiers as if they were nothing. She charged, her pulse rifle raised. The two collided in a clash of fire and steel, sparks raining into the smoke. "You are killing your own people," Rao shouted, straining against his strength. "They are not my people," Darius spat, shoving her back. "They kneel to weakness. They forget who we are. We are not saved. We are forged, and I will not let you unmake us." His spear struck, nearly splitting her armor. She rolled, firing, but he twisted away, the shot scorching the ground. Their duel raged amid the flames, neither giving ground, both fighting not only for survival, but for the soul of humanity itself. All around them the battle surged. Warriors of the tribes fell in droves, yet their fanatical will drove them on. The remembered faltered, but held the line, clinging to the hope that salvation might be real. The crew of the Solace fought with desperate resolve, their clean technology clashing against raw, primal ferocity. Then came the moment that changed everything. A young remembered girl, no more than 12, stumbled into the battlefield, clutching the torn scrap of the Earth flag. She stood between Rao and Darius, her tiny voice breaking through the chaos. "Stop, please. We are all human." The words cut like a blade. For an instant, both warriors froze. Rao's chest heaved. Darius's spear trembled. Around them the fighting slowed, eyes drawn to the small, defiant figure. But Darius's rage was too deep. His face twisted, and he raised his spear to strike. Rao moved before thought. She fired. The plasma bolt struck Darius square in the chest. The impact hurled him backward, his body crashing into the flames. His spear fell, burning out in the dirt. The battlefield went silent. For a moment, only the crackle of fire and the moans of the wounded filled the air. Then the tribes broke. Leaderless, their will shattered, they fled into the night, leaving their dead behind. Rao stood trembling, her rifle still smoking. The girl clutched the flag, tears streaming down her soot-streaked face. Mara rushed forward, gathering her in her arms. Darius's body smoldered in the flames, his voice gone, his creed silenced. But his words lingered in every survivor's mind. We endure. When the fires died and the smoke cleared, the crew of the Solace gathered the remembered. Some wept, some prayed, some stared blankly at the ruins. They were free, but they were broken. Salvation had come, but it had come drenched in blood. Rao addressed them with a heavy heart. We cannot undo what has been done here. We cannot erase the centuries of suffering, the choices you were forced to make. But you are human. You are not forgotten. If you wish it, we will take you from this world. We will bring you home. The word home rippled through the crowd. Some gasped, some sobbed, some looked away, torn between longing and fear. For EOS 9, brutal as it was, had shaped them. To leave it was to leave behind the very thing that defined their existence. Mara stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of all who remained. We will go, but we do not abandon who we are. We will carry the memory of our endurance with us. We will tell our children of the choosings, of the fire, of the hunger, not as shame, but as truth. Because survival is not weakness, it is strength, and we will endure still. Rao bowed her head. It was not the answer she would have given, but it was theirs, and that was enough. The survivors boarded the shuttle, leaving behind the smoking ruins of their world. As the engines roared and the ground fell away, they gazed out at EOS 9, scarred, merciless, and unyielding, a world that had tried to break them, and failed. From orbit, the planet looked almost beautiful. Clouds swirled across its surface like brushstrokes, hiding the scars beneath. Rao stood at the viewport, watching it shrink into the distance. "Forgotten no longer," she whispered. And in the silence that followed, she wondered what humanity had truly gained, or lost, in saving the survivors of the forgotten colony. For in their eyes, she had seen both horror and hope. In their hearts, she had seen both savagery and strength, and she knew one truth above all. What the survivors did to live would shock the universe.